Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. Today, I have a reoccurring guest, Doug Foresta, joining us, and he also is the producer of the show. The show has been on, we're over 4 years now, and we're coming up on our 200th episode, which is very exciting. And Doug has been my most reoccurring guest, and so I always enjoy when he's on the show. I feel like we have some really good, deep conversations. So Doug, welcome back to the program. And Doug, for any of our guests that, any of our audience that might not know about you, do you mind giving a little background about who you are and,
Uh,
what you
sure.
do? And yeah, just remind people
Sure.
who
Well,
you are.
Deborah, I can't believe it's been. You're right. It's going to be 4 years of. It's 4 years of the show, and yes, we're coming up on 200 episodes. That's incredible. And yeah, I do produce podcasts. I produce your podcast. It's definitely one of the longest running ones that I've produced. And as well as I'm a licensed therapist, and my background, how I started really was as a therapist doing podcasting to talk about self-help things, and then people started asking me how I did podcasts, and it kind of grew from there. So I'm really excited. Like I said, that's how we met over a decade ago. Was actually, you were one of my first, like probably one of the top first three people that I interviewed ever on a podcast. So here we are, 10 years later, and
It's
it's
amazing.
still going strong. I know today we're going to talk about, we're going to use a specific example of something that happened with Amtrak. We're not beating up on Amtrak, but the larger issue of maybe what are some of the takeaways here for corporations about about your brand. And Deborah, you've written, you wrote the book Inclusion Branding about this very topic. So I thought it would be a good topic. Let me kind of share with our audience a little bit, set the stage, and then and then maybe you can share with us your thoughts. So here's the deal. Amtrak announced Wednesday that, this is from CBS, but you can find it pretty much anywhere. The AP picked up this story, that it is changing its policy so people with disabilities will not be charged $25,000 for train tickets. The rail line tried to charge the disability advocacy group Access Living the extra money to remove seats to make room for wheelchairs. The group was going to go to downtown Bloomington for a retreat, a trip which a ticket should cost about $16. But Amtrak said since the group wanted to travel together, they would have to remove their seats to accommodate the wheelchairs and pass the costs on to Access Living. It is a new Amtrak policy. And now U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth got involved, and then of course Amtrak took the group for the regular price. And it said the seat removal fee was never meant to be applied to situations like the one Access Living was in. Well, okay, so what are your thoughts, Deborah? $25,000. If you're a person without a disability, you can take the train for $16. If you're a person
Right.
with a disability, you can take Amtrak for $25,000.
Well, the good thing is that, everybody with disabilities are, billionaires, and
Right,
so
incredibly wealthy.
they
We
they
know
can
that.
afford that. But at the same time, it's also interesting to note that the many of these members from Access Living, which is a wonderful group in Chicago, they had done this trip together multiple times in the past. So this wasn't a brand new request. But
Right.
but at the same time, I do applaud Amazon for realizing pretty
Amtrak.
quickly. Thank you. Sorry, change your name. I that was a Freudian slip. I love what Amazon's doing, but
I do too.
no, but but kudos for Amtrak realizing why that would be wrong. And I know that Amtrak really has made efforts to make train travel more accessible. Of course, I think they could do a lot better, and so could all of the other transportation. And it's a work in progress. So I applaud the efforts they've made. I applaud that they listened. I would say it's unfortunate that it took, it getting to the media and going to the AP, Wire, and for everybody saying, what's going on? But the good news is, in the long run, they did the right thing. But it does show you the problems that people with disabilities encounter every day. I know Lamondre Pugh, who works for Root Global Impact, he is our Chief Sustainability Officer. The transportation issues that he has to deal with is just shocking. You know, rides that have been prepaid and prearranged show up 2.5 hours late
without even thinking that that's a problem.
Right, and not even call them or tell them what's going on, and this happens over and over and over and over again. And so, you know, we talk so much on this show about accessibility and inclusion and disability rights, and that we matter as much as any other part of the population, but there's still so much work that needs to be done, and corporate brands need to really, really step up and be part of the innovations, part of the solutions. We're seeing it happen, but often it feels like many corporations don't really care, and that this is just a compliance thing they got to do. They got to reduce their risk to their brands and things like that. And that I still feel like there's a large amount of corporations that don't care about this issue, and or they're looking at it just from a compliance lens instead of an innovation lens. And I know that as we're filming this, they're winding up Davos, the World Economic Forum. And I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Caroline Casey and her amazing team at the Valuable 500, because a year ago at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, they announced that they were creating the Valuable 500 and that they wanted to be at a CEO level. They got all these really amazing CEOs behind it, like Paul Pullman, and formerly of Unilever. He retired last year from Unilever, and an amazing leader. And you've got Sir Richard Branson, you've got some just really amazing people. Well, the good news is we had some progress. So I just want to spend just a moment talking about some of the progress.
Sure.
So the good news about it was that I had it in the background that I was going to click right to. Okay, there it is. So they did a report, and this report is amazing. And you can find this report on valuable500.org. And I really recommend you going to this report, because it's really, really, it's amazing the progress that they've had. And I know I've talked to Caroline before, and she's going to be on the show again in the future with one of her colleagues, Joanne. And we've talked about what they've done, and she wanted so bad to, within a year, get a 500 national global corporations to join the Valuable 500. But the reality is, you know, there's a lot of moving parts with these corporations, and they just don't want the CEO to sign it and then that's it. They actually really want them to show true commitment at the boardroom level. So the report says 235 businesses, but I will let you know, they actually had 2 more join after the report was done. So we're now at 237 businesses. They have another 250 that are in queue, meaning the CEOs have signed it, they're ready to go, they're making their commitments. Another thing you can see by going to the Valuable 500 is you can go to the logos of the corporations that are out there. So they've gone through all the vetting, the CEOs committed to it, you know, they've done press releases about it, but there's another 250 in queue. Now, September 2020, they're going to close the Valuable 500. And so if you want, which I recommend if you're a corporation, because we are paying attention. So if you're a corporation that wants to be part of this, you need to go ahead and do it now. And I know I'm working with multiple corporations that I say, stop not moving forward. You know, right. I'm not saying you're procrastinating, but take this seriously, because the Valuable 500 at some point is going to close. Now they'll have a second round, and there'll be the Valuable 5,000 and blah, blah, blah. But if you want to be part of the original 500, the clock is ticking and we're watching. So just looking at the report, of the 235 businesses, that is combined revenue of 3.8 trillion. They have almost 10 million employees. They have a group level signatures of 111, market level signatures of 124, spanning 42 sectors, 24 countries. I mean, this is really, really, really interesting what they've done. And what does the Valuable 500 mean to business? Well, it's about growth, it's about your brand, it's about talent, it's about
Right.
design, it's about innovation. And you start looking at the companies. And once again, there's a bunch of them. So I'll just do a few shout outs: Accenture, Adobe, Atos, Boeing, BBC, Barclays, Tyson's Food, the Zebra Technology, Coca-Cola, Dow, IBM, Ernst& Young. There's just some amazing brands: Omnicom, Shell, Virgin Media. And so the good news is we are seeing really amazing corporations stand up, Sony, Sodexo, saying, no, we do believe that people with disabilities should be included. And I also like how they broke it into sectors. So there's 42 different sectors. There's 33 financial services. There are 18 from tech and software, 14 from media comms, 2 from education, 2 from cinema, 4 from health and fitness. I won't read all of them, but this is a movement in action, and this is not going away. And where you go next, it'll be interesting. One of the newest signatures is the Danske Bank. So it's very, very exciting to see these corporations stepping up, because this is just no longer a nice to have. If you're a corporation and you are not embracing the community of people with disabilities and people that are aging into disabilities, then you're not leading. You're not leading. And I don't believe in saying bad things about companies. We do talk about companies when they make mistakes, like Amtrak did, even though Amtrak fixed it. But at the same time, Doug, the days of corporations thinking that they don't need to be inclusive, they don't need to be accessible, they don't need to, those days are gone.
It's changing. It really has changed, and it's changed even more, over the past, the most recent, even the last couple of years. It's changed.
It feels
immensely.
like it. It really has. And, we're really proud to be working with brands like Lilly Pharmaceutical, who really is really, really dedicated to this. They're very dedicated. And, and Citi signed the Valuable 500, and they got in the initial ones that we just talked about. And so I'm just so proud of these brands. And when the good news about being part of the Valuable 500 is, not only do you tell our community you do care about inclusion, and the good news about inclusion is it benefits everybody, just like accessibility does, Doug.
That's right.
But we're noticing who is not joining. We are
That's right.
Don't think we're not noticing. And some are using the term of diverse-ish. And, so we're noticing who is and who is not leading. And where we're going to go with these Valuable 500 leaders, it's going to be a very, very interesting path. And if you're a corporation and you're listening, you haven't done it, for whatever reason, you haven't done it, you're going to miss an opportunity if you don't really make this a priority, and it will be noticed. And we're going to let the CEOs in the boardrooms really lead these conversations in more meaningful ways than we've seen. So then, Doug, you have, and the good news about the Valuable 500, not that I want to make this all about a commercial for the Valuable 500, but one thing I like about it is they're not trying to be everything to everybody. They're using the community and the experts, that are in the community. And so we could have helped, somebody like Amtrak avoid a problem. So they get in a situation, they're like, how do we handle this? I'll give you another example that happened years ago with Disney. Disney got in, they had policies to support people with disabilities, and some New York mothers realized that they could actually rent people with disabilities, and their kids could bypass all the lines. Oh
wow.
my gosh, really?
That's incredible.
It is incredible. It's incredibly shallow.
Yeah,
it was a business opportunity for the people with disabilities that were,
I guess, right,
going
exactly.
as posing. So I appreciate those entrepreneurs, but really? So you're going to rent a person with a disability,
right?
So your kids don't have to. Wow, what are you teaching your kids? But that's a whole nother issue. But at the time, Disney wasn't sure what to do. And so they sort of stepped in and messed with their policy, which turned into, they started getting just attacked left and right. And what I would have recommended when they figured this out themselves is This was not their fight. They hadn't done anything wrong. They had accommodated our community, which we were so grateful. Some people were taking advantage of it, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean your policy's bad. We appreciate the inclusion, the
Yeah.
accessibility efforts. And so sometimes a corporation will step into these rat holes and they don't know what to do. Well, if you're involved in our community and you have joined, for example, the Valuable 500 or other initiatives, and you've told us you care about us, we got your back. We're going to help you. We're going to help you navigate these sometimes really troublesome waters.
Sure.
And so there's so many ways that doing this, we add value. We really add value to the corporation. And I'll say one more thing, Doug, and then let you speak for a second. But one thing that we're doing at Rue Global, we have a new initiative, and we are looking at all of disability inclusion and what we do at Rue Global Impact from a three-legged stool. So it's about employees, it's about your customers, and it's about your brand. So your employees, you need to be hiring people with disabilities. You need to be retaining people with disabilities. You need to be accommodating us. You need to follow disability inclusion through the life cycle of the HR process, from recruiting, candidacy recruiting, hiring, onboarding, training, retention, promotion. And then from client perspective, you need to make sure that your products and your services are fully accessible, your built environments are accessible, your digital inclusion's accessible. Any place that you have a human-to-human touch or human-to-technology touch, your customers are touching your technology, we need it to be fully accessible. And then, of course, your brand. How are you telling your stories? How are you avoiding getting into the media saying you're going to charge people with disabilities and wheelchairs $25,000 for a ticket instead of 16?
Right.
So branding is a huge issue. And, you know, I go on and talk positively about brands, and sometimes I call brands out, like Domino's Pizza, that wanted to ruin the internet for all of us. You know, but we want to protect the brands that are protecting, including us, but we can't do it if you're not engaged in the conversations. So,
That's right.
you know, Doug, how do we get the attention of these corporations to let them know this is not going away? This isn't going away.
Yeah, I mean, we don't change. I think it's like anything else, you know, we don't change as human beings until the pain of not changing exceeds the pain of changing. And as much as we don't want to talk about, you know, we want to make this a positive conversation, the reality is that, you know, think about anything you've ever tried to do in your life, you know, lose weight, you know, gain a new habit, whatever it is, there's some pain that motivated you to, you know, the pain of not changing become greater than the pain of changing, because change is painful. It is, right? And I say painful, I don't mean like, it shouldn't really be painful. It just, it stretches you outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
So maybe discomfort might be a better word than pain, because pain sounds too punitive.
But I would say sometimes it is pain.
But sometimes it is pain.
It is very painful.
That's right.
Especially
exactly.
when you're being attacked, and maybe you're being attacked.
That's right.
I wrote an article about Huawei yesterday, and I posted it yesterday. And people have said to me, well, why would you support a brand like Huawei? Well, because I am one of the customers that's impacted by really terrible internet.
You have experienced these problems.
Yes. And I right now am at my son's house doing this recording because I'm down again at my home, because the booster that I use for my cell, which ties to the internet communications technology I do to do these shows, I have a piece of equipment that has failed. So I had to spend $900 out of pocket, because the small group that I use, the internet provider I use, they have to do black magic to make it work at my house, which is my home office, like so many people in the gig economy. And so we need real solutions, and we need dependable, affordable, stable, reliable internet. And I'm 2 hours from the Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. I'm 20 minutes from the capital of Virginia, one of the wealthiest states in the United States. And I cannot have a normal cellular call because I'm in this weird little spot
Yeah.
where, and my wireless provider is Verizon, but it's not Verizon's fault because the reality, there's pockets everywhere.
The infrastructure isn't there, right? And Verizon
No,
has,
it's just not.
yeah, right,
And they're trying, and they've tried boosters, but this group BOIP, they have figured out how to bring me internet. Now I have to buy the equipment, very expensive. When it breaks, very expensive. I just spent, in total, it's costing me about $1,100 to fix
wow,
and upgrade my
yeah,
equipment, and then I pay $250 a month. But I have to have reliable internet because of the work that I do. So
right,
people have said, well, you shouldn't. Why are you giving a shout out for Huawei? Well, because, if the government of the United States keeps picking on Huawei, the reality is there's going to be there's impact to the United States. There's impact
right.
to our suppliers and to the companies and to employees in the United States, and I don't want that either. So all I'm saying is, is China better than the US? Come on, can't we just collaborate together as a world? So anyway, I
Right. The,
didn't
the
write
problems
about
the
it.
problems that we have, I mean, even the valuable 500, it's multinet.
Yes.
The problems that we're facing are not going to be solved, and with nationalism. I mean, that's a
No,
whole
they're
other
really not.
conversation.
I
But
agree.
we can't just, America first isn't going to
No.
solve the problems that we have. Climate change. I mean, look at what's happening with this virus that
I know. I
that
know.
we're going through. I mean, it's going to become
Poor
a
China.
global,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I mean, borders aren't real things,
No,
and
they're not.
so
And people
global,
fly. People
right?
fly,
People fly, and
and they
climate
might not
change,
even
and
know they're sick. They don't even know. They
they mostly
maybe they
don't.
were exposed to
Right.
it, but they don't even know that
That's
they're
correct.
unhealthy.
Right. So within a week, you have
Right.
a problem in China, and then within a week,
Yeah.
it's here. And you can't shut out the world. It's impossible, and you can't
Oh,
solve problems by shutting yourself out from the world. It's not going to help. You've got to engage. I mean, I think that's part of it, right? I think that a lot of what's happened is corporations and organizations and people, because really, what
mhm.
are corporations made of? But
People.
people
Yeah.
have said to themselves, "I don't want to deal with this." Right? We're not going to do disability stuff because,
It's
we're
too
going to.
hard.
It's
Right.
too hard, and we're going to do something wrong,
Right.
right? And there's
And
a
we might get
risk
in trouble. Right.
there's a risk to doing something, right? But increasingly there's a greater risk of doing nothing.
I agree. I agree. And the younger people, the younger generations, God bless the younger
Right,
generations, they've said, we're not going to work for you,
right,
and we're not going to buy from you. What we really need to do as the community of people with disabilities, a billion plus strong, is we need to reward the corporations that are including us.
that's
We
right.
need to purchase from them. We need to buy them. We need to work for them. And we need to tell them these things. The reason why I selected you as an employer, which, by the way, that's what's happening these days. You want to be an employer of choice? We'll decide whether or not we want to work for you. We'll decide. And it's not just people with disabilities, it's other people that are saying, I don't want to work with a brand that's evil. I don't want to work with a brand that's bad. I wrote a blog. I haven't published it yet because I don't have it right yet, and I'm still
Yeah,
working on it. But the title is Who Gets to Decide if a Corporation is Bad? Because I had a couple of actual sort of friends, colleagues, give me some crap about that I would defend Huawei.
right,
And how dare I defend them when they're a Chinese company? And I was like, but there's a 1.4 billion people, 400 million people in
right,
China. Many of them are people with disabilities. Why would I turn my back on
right.
even one
Do
person
they
with a
not deserve,
disability?
right? Do they not
Right,
deserve
because
support?
they're Chinese. And
Yeah.
anyway, I would at that same time I would say Happy New Year, because tomorrow
Ah,
is Happy Chinese Lunar New Year,
oh wow.
and so it is the year of the rat. And if you don't know what sign you are, I'm a dog, which is
Oh,
loyal and
there you go.
dependable, and my husband's a dragon, and dragon and dog should never be together. Well, we didn't know that, but but it's I think it's really good to celebrate other cultures. And so, Happy New Year, Happy
Yeah,
Chinese
absolutely.
Lunar
Happy New
New
Year to
Year.
her. Yeah,
But somebody was saying, well, the Chinese government needs to stop these viruses. Well, I know, but harder said than done. One thing that did surprise me, I heard on the news this morning, Doug, that the Chinese government is actually going to build a hospital for 1,000 beds over the weekend.
Wow.
And I was like,
That's
wow,
it. That's
a
insane.
pop-up. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're in a crisis.
Yeah.
And so we want to pray for
The
them. We want
coronavirus.
to,
Yeah.
we want to help. But, looping back to corporations, if you think that we're not paying attention, you are so wrong.
Right.
If you join us and you say, no, I am committed to inclusion, we'll help you, we'll protect you, we'll
Right.
help you look at the three prongs that Rue Global's looking at: the customer, the employee, and the brand.
Right.
And then there's other amazing people in these conversations, but we'll help you get out of trouble and we'll support you. And more, we will talk about what you're doing. We'll defend you. And I defend corporations on social media all the time that are not my clients. They're not my clients. And I'm not going to defend you just because you're a client. Don't come to me if you just want somebody to try to help you get out of trouble, but you're not committed to the community of people with disabilities, because I'm not your person. I'm
Right.
not interested in working with that. I don't
Right.
want you just to do your branding spin. You have to be committed to the community of people with disabilities and other disenfranchised groups, or I'm not going to work with you because I am the community. But it is just very interesting seeing corporations getting a black eye in the media because they're just being careless. It's just carelessness. I mean, what happened with Amtrak? Come on.
Right.
And whoever told these people with disabilities you were going to charge them $25,000? I mean, did that person not have any common sense? Because I
Right.
mean, come on. It's like whoever decided at Domino's Pizza that they were going to take making their website accessible for people with disabilities to the Supreme Court.
That's
Do you
right.
think that's good for your brand? It's not
Right.
good for your brand. And then we're going to talk about you as an example of what you shouldn't do for years to come.
You don't want to be on this program, right? You want to be on this program where we're lifting you up and talking about you as a model for others. You don't want to be on this program with us going, don't make this blunder that
Right.
XYZ Corporation made. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it's carelessness. I don't believe that Amtrak hates people with disabilities or that they have
no.
animosity.
No,
I think
they're wonderful.
But it does show you that, just like you need to pay attention to every other aspect of your business, you need to pay attention to this aspect of your business. And it's not enough, to say, well, we don't discriminate, or, we're good
Right.
people, or we're well-intentioned. You have to take positive steps towards ensuring that these kind of things don't happen.
I agree. And there's so many corporations doing it now and stepping up, and
Right.
And I'm so proud. I can't help it. I love being an American, and I'm so proud of the U.S. brands that have stepped up. The Ernst & Youngs, the Boeings, the Tyson's Food, the Zebra Technology, Citi. There's so many that have stepped up. So many more that I think could do a lot more, and that we don't hear about you at all in these conversations. And once again, we're noticing who is and is not in these conversations. And and the good news is that you want it to be bigger than your diversity and inclusion efforts. But the good news is any diversity and inclusion efforts you're making, people with disabilities run into those.
That's right.
Those other diversity groups. There are many women with disabilities. So you got women and disabilities. There are, men and women that are part of the LGBT community. Boom, boom. There's all this intersectionality and neurodiversity conversations going on. And now we have all these really, deep, intense technology and disruption conversations going on, and it ties directly into inclusion as well. And what does it mean to be truly human? And you want innovation and creativeness as an employer? Yeah, you do. Hire people with disabilities. They think differently. They have no choice.
That's
but
right.
To think differently,
they have to,
because society disables them.
That's right.
By not being accessible, by not doing inclusive design, by not being creative. And so there is so many really solid, good business reasons to support this community and to be visible and telling us your stories. And that's something I talked about in inclusion branding. But if you're doing it, but you're not telling us about it, and I'll give you an example. Fidelity Investments, they're doing some really cool things. We talked about it on the show. but it started, which sometimes it does, and I actually like when it starts here in the employee resource group, sort of the grassroots efforts. They got executive sponsors, but they really got the employees that had disabilities or had loved ones with disabilities or cared about this topic, and they brought them together, and then they started talking about what could they do to make Fidelity better for everyone. And it's, the stories are so powerful and so beautiful, and so it's okay to start there.
Yeah.
And I know that Lilly Pharmaceutical, that's where they're starting too, at their employee resource, using them as a resource group. The employees want to help the brand. You know, Merck was really good with that when they were doing their employee resource group. Dell was doing it. So there's a lot of really good examples. And then Microsoft's doing so much. God bless Microsoft. And Satya Nadella, he's really talking a lot about climate change and climate action and inclusion. So the corporations that, you know, Huawei's doing this with their tech for all, tech for good, digital inclusion. If we don't have digital inclusion, we get disenfranchised. You know, we were just talking about that.
Probably in the largest way that you can possibly be disenfranchised now in the future.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the digital divide continues to widen, and that's not good for any of us. And so, and it's, you know, once again, part of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, the 17 that we've decided as a world. But these are really important topics. And, you know, the reality is, if you're listening to this program, you probably already care about this topic and you're probably already engaged. So I'm probably speaking to the choir, but I try to go out and speak all the time about these topics on podcasts and webinars and going to conferences. I'm going to be at the World Mobile Congress in Barcelona. Very stoked about going to that at the end of February. So join the conversations. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us how you're, you know, what are you doing innovatively? What do you wish you were doing? What, you know, how can we support you? How can we, I had one company yesterday come to me and say, Deborah, we have our geo footprint includes Asia Pacific. And so what we want to do is we want to talk to some other corporations in those areas that are doing this, sort of to compare notes, which is why it's good to belong to like the Valuable 500 or the International Labor Organization's Global Business Disability Network, because that's when you get peer-to-peer conversations and other groups. You know, you've got NOD, you've got, I was going to say USVLN, but it's Disability:(IN. You've got the World WID. There's so many good groups out there that can help facilitate the conversations, and you're really talking to the community of people with disabilities, as well as, you know, strategic consultants like my group and many others. But you just want to make sure that as a corporation, when you're joining, this is something that the audience and our community are behind. You want to make sure that if you hire strategists or consultants, are they employers of people with disabilities themselves? If they're not, don't use them. Because if they're not hiring people, if they're not walking the walk themselves, their websites aren't accessible, their services, their proposals aren't accessible to you, they're not hiring people with disabilities, well, they're not really experts. So there's so many clues that a corporation has, and more the lawyers and the investors are coming into this community. You see people popping up all the time. So the corporations have to do their homeworks to make sure that they are working with credible sources. But will you start, and will you tell us what you're doing? And, you know, and this isn't going away. This is something that has become very important to the world, which is exciting.
I couldn't agree more, Deborah. And I'm glad that that we do episodes like these from time to time as a reminder, and like, even though you said, we're speaking to might be speaking to the chorus, but you know what? The people who are listening are speaking to other people as well. And not all those people are in the chorus. And plus you have a lot of platform. And so we have lots of people that are listening.
And we have hashtags.
And
so the good news is we put
right.
hashtags out on these episodes to try to draw in and effectively draw in bigger audiences. Because if we're talking about cybersecurity, that's a whole nother audience, but you can't, we got to have cybersecurity to protect our community too.
And the best time to start on these endeavors is yesterday, The
Yes.
second best time is today.
Ooh, good one, Doug.
and so, and so,
Good one.
yeah, I didn't invent that. Somebody did, but yeah,
Yeah, but that's a good one.
but I really encourage, like you said, the brands and corporations that are listening to this to take action. It's not enough to be well-intentioned. Join the Valuable 500. Join, as Deborah just gave you a bunch of different organizations that are part of the solution. Be part of the solution. Be the light. Help be part of the movement to unlock human potential. We can't do it alone.
I agree. And so well said. And also, who isn't impacted? I mean, I, have ADHD and I sometimes struggle with depression and anxiety. It's amazing what my brain can worry about. I was laying in bed last night worrying about my husband. What if I go to exercise class and he's alone and it's like, okay, Deborah, worry about that later. Right now, sleep. But it's, and I know your son has an IEP and he's amazing. Sam's amazing.
Thank
And
you.
and we need to stop assuming that we even understand who we're talking about when we're talking about disability inclusion, because it's not just people that are blind or just people that are deaf or people that are people in a wheelchair. We're a lot bigger community. We have so much value to add to the world, and the world is a better place because people with disabilities are in it. It really is. And I think we really need to once again really value what it means to be human beings, especially at this time of such great disruption and the rise of artificial intelligence.
Amen, Deborah. Thank you so much. I really look forward to continuing the conversation. And I'm hoping next time it'll be, we'll pull something out about something wonderful that Amtrak has done. So,
well, and really, Amtrak really has made a lot of efforts to be accessible
right.
and be inclusive.
We're not trying to pick
for
on Amtrak.
Years, right? For years, I've been watching their progress. They really haven't, and still sometimes something will break down, and then you have this really embarrassing news articles that hit the media, and that's unfortunate, and that's just part of being a corporate brand. You don't control your brand anymore, and so mistakes will happen. But that's when the community comes back and says, yeah, but I remember Amtrak's been really working on this hard. They really care about it. A mistake was made. They fixed it. It was unfortunate. It shows us how big these problems continue to be, but they have made a lot of efforts. And I know that's because I've watched them and I'm actually one of their customers. I use Amtrak a lot, but at the same time, mistakes are made. So that's why you need to be part of this community, so that when you do something unfortunate, we can remind people that you have actually made efforts. But Doug, thank you so much for being on the program today. I appreciate your wisdom and your voice, your mentoring.
Thank you, Deborah.
And the path that we're all walking together, which is just part of the human path. But I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate the audience and all the support and the love that the audience gives to us. We always want to know if you have recommendations of guests that will add value to the program. Let us know who they are, and and we're looking forward to that 200th episode coming upon us really soon. So Doug, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Deborah. It's always a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.